Hello, everyone. How are you doing? It's great to be with you here today again. My name is Catherine, and we have a lot of things to discuss. Today, we will be looking into a topic that is of great interest to all of you since exams are approaching, during this winter session. Before continuing, I'd like to share my screen and get things going. So without further ado, here we go, and we are ready. Okay, so today's session has to do with how to best prepare candidates for the speaking part of the exams. I really am excited about this webinar because I'm going to share with you a lot of secrets. I've been an examiner for more than 18 years, which means I have a lot of things that I want to share with you, things that you probably haven't even thought of because every university has their own way of conducting exams. And since I've had the privilege of taking part and being an examiner for many universities, I think that there are a lot of things, that we can, share. Okay, so let's get things going. Now, before starting our presentation, I would like to focus on the contents of this presentation so that you're fully aware of what we're going to be talking about. Now, this is going to be a long one. This is about an hour and a half, so it's a good idea so that you know what I'm going to focus on. So let's get started. We will be talking about the diversity of oral exams because there are so many universities and colleges, and each college and university, they conduct it in different ways. Okay, the criteria, the way they assess students, the whole format of the test, there are a lot of things that we have to talk about. Now, as for the qualities that are in the spoken language, what do we exactly need? What do we examine? How do we assess it? There are so many things. And to be honest, even though that there are so many, different, certificates, about 80 to 90% of the criteria does remain the same. Besides, we have to follow the CEFR, the Common European Framework. And what they dictate that these universities and colleges should follow, they must actually, show respect to these criteria. Now, this is an interesting one. How do oral examiners assess candidates' performance? Okay, I'm going to let you in on a lot of secrets and how we work. Now, body language. Okay, this plays a major role in the whole, presentation, how you speak, and of course, how you will inspire your examiner when he marks you. We'll be talking about penalizations for pausing or hesitation. This is something a lot of people have asked me. Do they penalize, students if they pause or hesitate? We'll explain this. Clarification. Okay, when a student asks, for more, information, or when he does not comprehend something, can a student ask for more info and more clarification? We'll see this as well. Memorization and rehearsed answers. I actually hate memorization. We'll talk about it. Reaching conclusions. Okay, how's the proper way to reach a conclusion? Now, the third part of the presentation will focus on dialogues, conversations, when we have to do, a talk with someone else. Now, we're going to focus on how to have a conversation, how to comment politely, supporting the person that we're with, our fellow candidates, okay, and not condemning them. What is the proper conversation etiquette? Okay, how do we actually, speak politely to someone, especially during an exam? The secrets of a good conversation. And of course, respecting the time limits, because this is probably one of the most serious issues that many test takers have. They don't respect the time limits. They are either, below the time limit or, they surpass it by far, actually, in many cases. Okay, now the last part of the presentation has to do with classifying oral skills. What should we practice? Okay, so I'm going to advise all teachers on what they should practice in class without, straying too far from the school syllabus. You won't have any problems with the time, trust me. Okay, and of course, different class assessment strategies, how you as teachers can better assess your students and, come to the conclusion if they are ready to sit for the exams. stressful students. This is another topic that we'll be delving into. All of our kids are stressed. I will give you some advice that I want you to share with your students to make them feel much better when they are sitting for their exams. And trust me, it does help. This is probably the most important part of this webinar. We'll be sharing some information about how students with special educational needs should be, treated, because this is something that most teachers neglect, and it's a shame because the procedure and the way that we approach, the students, the way that they are marked and everything is different, and we have to look into this, okay? Yes, we are going to see some segments from an actual speaking test that I've conducted for a lower level student, B2 student for a major university. Okay, so let's get things rolling. We're going to be talking first of all about the diversity of oral exams. Okay, what do we mean by diversity? If I'm not mistaken, I think that right now there are 23 colleges and universities that offer students the potential to be examined and be certified in the use of the English language according to the CEFR, the Common European Framework. So this is something that, on the one hand, offers a lot of benefits because there's a wide selection of universities that students can choose from. However, on the other hand, it makes things more complicated because there's so many tests and so many ways of assessing students. It would be highly advisable for teachers to be careful and know beforehand how the test works and explain it fully to the candidate. Now, there are multiple levels because it's not only the diversity in tests. We're talking about 2023, universities. We're talking about different levels, starting from A1, the junior levels, all the way up to C2 proficiency. So you have to be fully aware that even within the same university, the same college, the test differs from level to level. And of course, the test formats, okay, because it's not a secret, okay? There are, universities in America, there are universities and colleges in Britain, and, there are even, some certificates that are local, okay? You have, some English language certifications, even in Greece, okay? All right, now, the marking criteria varies from test to test. Some tests actually focus more on fluency than they do on, grammar use, syntax, vocabulary. It depends on the university and the college. So please be aware of the fact that even if your student might be an A student in grammar or vocabulary, but is kind of shy or is not that fluent, be careful of which certificate you're going to choose. Okay, because it might be very detrimental, to the student's mark. Now, how are you going to realize these things? Each college and university does share um, marking sheets, criteria, and they offer webinars. And they actually tell you what the criteria they focus on the most so that you can know what you should, focus on and assist your students to the best of your capacity, okay? Now, some tests are, single tests. Some must be done with a partner, another candidate. Some universities actually have one test taker for a specific level, but two test takers for another. One such example is Michigan. Michigan B2 level lower, ECC, for example, has one test taker. On the other hand, ECP has two test takers. And we're talking about the same university. Other universities like, Cambridge, they have two test takers everywhere. Okay, now, something else that we have to focus on, because we're talking about so many colleges and universities, we have to focus on the multitude of tasks. There are so many ways of assessing and evaluating students, and not all of these tasks are used in all levels or all universities. This is crazy because there are some certificates that do not assess students in their abilities to describe a picture. One such example is the University of Michigan. They don't examine students in describing pictures. Cambridge, on the other hand, does. Okay, so one such example, okay, in some exams, they will focus on monologues or dialogues or both, okay? Because you might get a mark, a really good mark for a monologue, but for the dialogue part, Maybe you're not, a conversationalist. I mean, you might not be really good at conversations. Now, something else, describing a photo, as I mentioned, some universities actually advocate this, some others don't. Some universities want you to describe a photo briefly for like 30 seconds. Others want you to elaborate on it and express your feelings and your opinion. They even want you to select between two photos. So there are a lot of things that we can talk about. Description of an event. I love this one. They might give you some information and you can describe it. Or, for example, they might show you a series of pictures and you describe the event. This, for example, is used in an A2 level, yes, a very basic level of Cambridge, the YLE certificate, the A2 level of flyers, because they give you like 5 pictures and it's like a comic strip and you have to describe the series of events, which is remarkable. It's a beautiful test. Okay, problem solving. This is something that is used in most certificates. They make you choose between two solutions to a problem. Michigan ECC does this a lot, the B2 level examination. So they give you two situations. You have to elaborate on both, weigh the pros and cons of each, and of course, try to convince the examiner or the person you're speaking with about the best solution to a problem. Now, expressing preference, because it's not only about problems, but there's also the ability to choose between two selections. All right, expressing a preference concerning a venue, someplace to visit, going out to a restaurant, what to choose, to eat, to have for dinner, or even buying clothes at a store. There's so many things that you can describe, and I'm stressing all these because later on during this webinar, I'm going to propose some speaking tasks that you can do in your schools, okay? Role play. I love role play. I mean, it adds this intense flavor to class. I mean, it's wonderful when you see kids role playing and they're acting, okay? And this allows them the freedom to express themselves and use more vocabulary, body language, and of course, in many cases, okay, you can see them, showing their true potential. It's exciting and it's something that kids like because bluntly expressing your opinion doesn't have that, special extra energy that, role play does. And I highly endorse that you do role play in class. It's really good. Supporting an argument. Yes, this is, supporting our opinion. In many cases, for example, Pearson, there is this debate that you have in one of the tasks in which you have to try to convince the examiner of your intentions about doing something. And the examiner will try to make you change your mind, but you have to support your opinion. So this is what we call supporting an argument. This is actually also used in Michigan ECP proficiency level, where the examiner tries to counter your proposal by saying how bad your decision is, but you have to convince the examiner that what you're doing and your opinion is correct. Okay, now, both educators and students must be fully aware of the format and the key criteria. I don't know, it's amazing. I've been examining for 18 years. You have no idea how many times students have sat for the exams and they keep mixing up the test. So for example, in Michigan ECC, they offer you two pictures, which just, set you in the mood or, help you decide between two options or two solutions. And, there are many kids that enter the exam room in Michigan and they're like, okay, in the first picture, I can see. I'm like, no, 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 you don't have to describe the picture. So sometimes I'm wondering, I mean, was a student stressed and made that mistake? The teacher didn't explain the test to the student. Now, as an examiner, because I have to correct the student and explain that, no, this is not the way we do it, the student becomes stressed. Okay, and this is horrible because we don't want the student to be stressed. We want the student to show his true potential. The fact that he didn't know how to do the test doesn't mean that he's bad at communicating, that he doesn't know how to speak the language. And it's a pity because students are capable of wonderful things. Okay, we just have to open the door, as we always say, and show them the way in. Now, as for the criteria, okay, consult practice test books. Okay, practice test books show you the procedures on how to conduct the test. There are so many ELT books in the market. I am fully appreciative of all the webinars that the universities and colleges are doing. You can actually register for one. They will fully explain it. Even if they don't have a webinar, you can call the university, contact them, contact the exam provider, and they will usually send someone over, or they can arrange a webinar for you. It's better to be informed of the test and not assume things by just reading a few things here and there. All right. So having said all this, what about this webinar? What test will we focus on? Well, I'd say all of them and none of them. What do I mean by this? The goal of teaching a language, okay, in this case, the English language to a child, our ultimate goal is for the kid to learn, the language itself. Okay, I mean, having the kids sitting for exams later on is okay, something that the child will need, a certification later on in life. However, if we're focusing on passing a test instead of learning the language, then I'm sorry, this approach is flawed. And, a lot of problems will come out of it. Now, since we do have a lot of students, myself included, that are sitting for the exams, I will say that this webinar will focus on strategies and things that, kids should avoid during the test, things that they should do. And yes, I will try to incorporate elements out of all the tests into this webinar. Okay. All right, now let's move forward and get things rolling. What are the qualities of a spoken language? Okay, first of all, the ones I've chosen here are 90% common for most of the exam tests. Let me remind you, there are 23 universities and colleges. It's not that easy. So, grammatical range and accuracy, lexical resource, fluency, coherence, comprehension. Can we understand what the person is saying? Pronunciation, social linguistic appropriateness, task completion. Now, I want to stress something that in theory, everything sounds great because I will focus like 30 seconds on each of these. I have, some separate slides explaining what these are. However, you can fully understand that practice is better than theory, and we'll be looking into practice further down, the presentation. However, I will briefly explain in theory what each one of these elements have to do with. Okay, so when we're talking about grammatical range and accuracy, grammar, the ability to use a wide range of structures. We understand this, okay? We're talking about tenses, we're talking about idioms, we're talking about phrasal verbs, we're talking about passive voice, we're talking about everything, okay? Now, when we're talking about accuracy, grammatical range, it's the production of error-free sentences with only occasional inappropriacies or basic non-systematic errors. What do we mean by this? Well, what we mean by this is that we actually want the student to be able to construct a sentence that the examiner, okay, will understand, or not only the examiner, when one travels to another country and you're speaking in English, that someone can understand us, even if we have some mistakes. Okay, that's very important. Now, every examination is based on the level of range and accuracy. Okay, so what do we mean by this? If it's an A1 level, a junior level, of course, we're not going to examine reported speech and passive voice, just maybe a few elements. But the thing is that we're not going to talk about, inversions and, conditionals, mixed conditionals. We are examining the level of the student. Now, how do you know what the level of our examination is going to be? Just by looking at the contents of your course book, for example, okay? So if you have an A1 level student and you examine the contents of the course book, you will see that, the student will be learning present continuous, present simple. They will learn first, second conditional, for example, okay? And past simple, just a few elements. Now, even if you don't follow a course book, which is kind of impossible, but let's say that you don't, you can actually ask the guidelines from the college and university, and they will send you, okay, a written report of everything that they examine. Okay, the grammar range, okay, the tenses. Cambridge, for example, for the YLE, the young learners of English, They actually even provide you with the vocabulary that they're supposed to learn, which is amazing. Okay, you can find this all online. Now, fluency and coherence. What do we mean by fluency? Well, I'm not saying that you should that you should talk like a chatterbox, okay, nonstop. We don't examine that. Okay, we are examining how a student can speak the language without many pauses. All right, because a lot of people misjudge the whole point of having oral examinations. I have students who come in and they're trying to speak as fast as possible, which is a mistake. No one does that. Okay, the whole idea of fluency is to speak without pauses. Okay, and I'm not talking about natural pauses like hesitations where we're thinking like, let me think. We're talking about pauses during, uttering a sentence. So we speak fluently with occasional repetition or self-correction. Hesitation is usually content related and only rarely to search for language like, okay, let me think about that. Oh, I understand. All right. These are, small little pauses and, hesitations that we accept, and they're natural elements of the language. They are not to be reprimanded. Now, when we're talking about fluency and coherence, we're talking about the ability that a student has to develop topics coherently and appropriately. All right. And finally, as with the grammar, the level of fluency and coherence reflects exam level. We don't want them to think that an A1 level student is capable of speaking fast and nonstop. Yes, of course, there are students that can do that, but that's not what we're examining. At these basic levels for most certificates, we usually focus on their grammar range, accuracy, syntax, vocabulary, the way they stress words and intonation. Okay, every certificate has their own way of evaluating students. Okay, so let's move on. Comprehension, the ability to convey ideas clearly. Okay, we want the person we're talking with, okay, our partner, okay, the examiner, to be able to understand what we're talking about. Okay, proper use of vocabulary and lexical structures. I have to focus on something right now. There are a lot of kids that, unfortunately, learn so many words. Okay, they are meticulous students. I applaud their efforts. Okay, and they're trying to learn as much vocabulary as possible. However, not all vocabulary suits or matches their intentions and what they're trying to say and what they want to convey. So it's a good idea to practice as much as possible and have a more natural feel of the language, because a lot of students, try to use words that, I wouldn't even use, and they don't make much sense, even though in the dictionary the meaning is used as such, but it doesn't mean that we use it in speaking, okay? Because there's a difference in using some words, orally and some others in writing. Okay, let's move on. Now, potential to sustain a conversation. Can the student sustain a conversation and make sense? That's comprehension. Pronunciation. I don't want to be judgmental, but there are so many students in Greece as well that don't have, the ability to speak English with a proper pronunciation. Pronunciation is an element of the language. And in many cases, pronunciation can either, okay, I'll be honest, they can really reduce your mark. If you speak in such a fashion that you don't make sense, and the intonation and everything, okay, the properties of your spoken language are incomprehensible, then I'm sorry, pronunciation will reduce your mark if it's not, at the level that, we desire. So the sounds that we are uttering, are they effective? Does our listener, understand what we're saying? The accuracy, expressiveness. Okay, when we're expressing ourselves, okay, I'm not only talking about body language, but the way that we express ourselves, the intonation and how we stress syllables and things that we have to focus mostly on. Now, social linguistic appropriateness, are they examining manners and how polite a student is? Yes and no. Okay, when you're speaking with someone, all right, it is a part, an element of every language around the world to be polite. Okay, excuse me, may I come in? Thank you. Have a good day, please. Okay, these are elements of the language. Okay, and to be honest, it's not only about elements of the language, it's about being polite to a fellow human being. Now, these things are integral parts of our language. So this is what we call appropriateness of the language. And yes, we do mark this as well. Our body language, our gestures, okay, are we smiling or are we grumpy? Okay, in many other cases, I've seen students, maybe out of stress, but, they completely ignore you. They look the other way. They don't pay attention to you at all, which is kind of sad. Yes, I just mentioned politeness and formality, okay, because when you're speaking to your examiner, you have to be, polite and formal. He's not your best friend because I've had students enter the exam room and they're trying to befriend me, which is horrible in some cases. Oh, I really like what you're wearing. You know what? I think that your lipstick though doesn't match you. Why don't you go try something else? I'm like, oh my God. I mean, you just met me. I mean, and you're talking about my lipstick, which okay, you're expressing your opinion, but I don't find that polite. Okay, we don't know each other. We're not friends. Okay, we're not that acquainted. And yes, I know it's mind blowing, but a lot of students might do this. Okay, they're over friendly. Now, intonation patterns for pragmatic, effect. Um, I'll be honest. Okay, the way that we stress some syllables in a sentence will offer completely different meaning. Okay, and what we're trying to express to our readers. Okay, so for example, when you're describing a picture, he crashed the car into a tree. Now, it's like he doesn't care or, doesn't mean anything. However, if he did the same thing, like he crashed the car into the tree. So in this case, by, following some intonation patterns and making it more realistic, you have a better command of the language and you're showing the examiner that you know how to use the language. Not saying that you should be an actor, but, show some passion. I mean, we were looking at a picture of a car wreck and, the student didn't care. Okay, now, task completion. This is a very important, if not the most important quality of the spoken language. And I know it's not a quality of a language, but it's a quality of the language as it has to do with the examinations. Okay, so if we ask the student to state his opinion about how to dress for a formal event, and he starts talking about what he's going to drink, I'm sorry, but that's off topic and he will get a 0. I'm not joking. Okay, a lot of students miscomprehend what we ask them to share and they completely fail on that part. And we're going to see an example towards the end of this webinar because I have a live presentation. I have a video that I recorded with one of my candidates. So task completion, topic nomination, you start talking about the topic. You maintain the conversation and the way that you terminate it, okay, the way that you close, it's like writing an essay. There must be cohesion, okay, when explaining the task. Now, relevance to topic. Okay, so are you on or off topic? I mean, is it relevant to the question that the examiner asked you? I'm sorry to say this, but 2 out of 5 cases, they are not relevant. Yes, it's a huge statistic. I mean, it's like 2 out of 5 students, it's like 4 out of 10. It's amazing. Now, detailed expansion of task. Has the student elaborated and explained, talked about the task in detail? This is something that, we're really interested in. Now, assessing candidates. Whew, okay, this is the next part of our webinar. How do we assess candidates? A lot of kids, when I show them, the recorder, even discreetly, they go crazy, they lose it. A recorder has many purposes. It's not only to mark them. You'd be surprised at how many things, we use the recorder for. For example, the recorder can be used, for example, and let me show you here. The recorder can be used to share the information with someone else because For example, I might only be an interlocutor. Some certificates, some universities only want us to be interlocutors, which means we're just having the conversation. The recording is then given to someone else at the university to mark the student. And he has this form here, and he starts adding the marks. Now, another reason that we have the recorder, when we are also examiners, sometimes, we might not be 100% sure of the mark, and we don't want to, throw the kid under the bus. So we really want to hear it again. We play the recording again so that we can actually help the kid have a better mark, okay, if we're not 100% sure of what we heard. Also, the recorder is used as evidence, okay, in case something bad happens, in case the student wants a reevaluation for whatever purpose. Okay, so it's a good idea for the kids not to be stressed. You can actually share this information with them that it's for their benefit. Sometimes because we're tired, after examining 30 or 40 students, we might want to hear it again to be sure that we can give him, some extra points. Now, this is a scoring sheet from the University of Michigan, from ECC, okay, a B2 level scoring sheet. And as you can see, stage 1 is not scored. What is stage 1? In most, not all, in most certificates, stage 1 is getting to know the candidate. Hello, what's your name? What kind of job would you like to do in the future? Why are you studying English? Tell me about your hobbies, your parents. Now, this is, the warm-up stage, and it's not scored. In most certificates, it's not scored. However, I'll be honest with you. If a student is not able to present himself properly, to talk about some basic things about himself, it does kind of influence us in a bit. It's the first impression. We're human beings. I mean, if a student comes in, I'm either like, okay, the student can't talk and talk about himself. So he's either really stressed or he doesn't know how to speak English. That's the first impression we get. So it would be advisable, and we're going to talk about this later on in the webinar, to actually better prepare your students for the first stage of the test. It does play a role, even though if it's not marked. Okay, how many examiners are in the room? Okay, so when we're assessing, you might see one examiner, you might see two examiners. Okay, so in this case, one is the interlocutor, we just speak to the student, and the other one is correcting, is, marking. Or there might be three people in the room. One could be the examiner, the other interlocutor, and the third one will be assessing us. So if a student actually enters, the exam room and goes crazy, oh my God, there were three people inside. No, they were actually assessing us, okay, which is something that I endorse, because as examiners, we can't do anything we want, okay? We should also be, examined, supervised, and assessed. So tell your students that sometimes the second examiner could be for the first examiner, or, it's something that they should come to the realization that we are also stressed, okay? It's not only them that's being examined. So interlocutors and assessors, what did I just mention? Yes, if there are two of us, one is only speaking, the other one in the back, he's not taking a nap, okay? He's working, all right? He's just, marking the student. All right, as for the evaluators, yes, I mentioned it earlier, they are evaluating us, okay? Now, as for body language is essential. And what do I mean by this? Your body posture. Are you sitting straight? I'm not saying that you're a model or anything, but however, if you're slouching and you're not paying attention to the examiner, it's kind of rude. And, from your body language, we can also communicate, okay? Because when we show the candidate a picture and he's like, oh, you see surprise, or you're like, confidence, all right? Or when we're thinking, we're like, all of these body gestures are part of communication, okay? They will exude confidence, all right? So when we're like, okay, I know the answer to that, all right, these body gestures will assist in, adding to the candidate's confidence. We, as examiners, will understand that this student knows what he's doing, okay? He looks confident, he knows how to speak the language. It does, affect us as well. And of course, body language is used to reinforce ideas. All right, we need body language. All right, verbal communication alone is not 100% the key to having a conversation. Oh boy, why did I add this? I've spoken with psychologists, and I don't smoke. However, a psychologist once told me that you can't reprimand, someone for smoking because it is a way of, facing stress. Other people, public speakers, I'm talking about public speakers. They also, chew gum because they're stressed in front of an audience. Now, some people chew gum very discreetly. I have no problem with it. However, sometimes some kids, enter the exam room and they are stressed. I understand it, and they start chewing gum like this. And I can't understand what they're saying. I have no problem that they're chewing the gum, but I can't understand them. And we're recording them, okay? And we actually, can't understand what they're trying to convey. So I am in the difficult position of asking the student, I'm so sorry, could you please spit the gum because I can't understand you. Now, by doing that, the candidate becomes extremely stressed and his mark will drop because he will not, be that efficient during the test. So I would advise you as teachers, I'm not going to tell you to tell your students to spit the gum. It's okay. But just ask them that if they're going to chew gum, do it discreetly, okay, so that I can hear them. And of course, for the recording to be properly executed. Okay, I don't want to be the one to put them in the difficult position because they don't know me. I'm the examiner and they'll be stressed. You as teachers, because they love you and they know you, it's better if you prepare them before they go to the exams. Okay, thank you. Now, eye contact. Oh boy, I'm going to admit something. I am a public speaker. I'm a TEDx speaker. I have given more than 80 speeches throughout my career. I can speak to a huge audience of 300 people. However, I regret to inform you that I have difficulties when I have to speak with someone that I'm not really familiar with. Okay, I do have problems with eye-to-eye contact when I'm one-on-one. I understand that students have the same issues. However, by looking at the person in the eye, it's a sign of respect. I try as hard as I can to do this. I don't say that I am successful at it, but I do. And it does make me feel much more comfortable when a candidate comes in and he looks at me in the eyes. It means that he's not ashamed to talk to me. And I really appreciate it. Hand gestures. We do need hand gestures when we're explaining something to the point, as they say. However, overdoing it is kind of distracting and a bit annoying. So if you see a student who is really stressed and can't stop, the hand gestures, it becomes extremely annoying. I'm doing it right now. I don't know if you can see my little window. It's very annoying. Okay. Try to keep your kids, tell them that it's okay. They don't have to shake their hands that much. Try to be more relaxed. Oh boy, pausing and hesitating. Pauses are accepted to allow test taker to evaluate. For example, if I ask a student a question, it's okay. I mean, I would pause and think about the answer for a few seconds. It's natural. However, more than 3 or 4 seconds is considered too much. Okay, I mean, if you ask someone, okay, so what do you think about the weather today? Well, okay, it was sunny in the morning, but later on it started to get cloudy. I hope it doesn't rain. Okay, it's natural to think for about 2, 3 seconds. However, if you ask a candidate a simple question and he answers after like 10 seconds, no, that's not a pause. That's a huge gap. Okay, no fluency. All right, and this is something that we don't want. Now, many tests allow specific time for this. In many tests, such as, for example, Pearson or Cambridge, okay, they say you have 15 seconds to prepare yourself. We tell the candidate you have 15 seconds, or in other cases, we say you have 10 seconds. And this is great. Other tests actually give you 30 seconds to read some prompts. And for Michigan example, they give you 2 minutes to read through all the prompts in Michigan Proficiency, the ECP test. So it's what I said at the beginning of the webinar. Try to follow the instructions, be informed of what the university or college, considers appropriate for the test. And, if you actually follow the rules and instructions, the test will flow properly. Now, Do they give you extended time? Well, there's so many students that really make my life a living hell. I'm sorry for the expression. I tell them 1 minute, okay, express your opinion, because I have to follow the instructions of the test. If at some point they surpass the 1 minute, I say thank you. Like, no, 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 I want to continue. Well, in these cases, I mean, just try to respect the examiner, because I'm going to talk about this further down. What are the repercussions for not listening to the examiner? Now, during a speech, a few instances of pausing are allowed. Okay, we do allow for a few pauses. It's natural. I pause during the test, during any test. I would pause during this webinar. I mean, I'll be speaking for an hour and a half. It would be unnatural for me to speak nonstop without thinking a bit and having a few pauses. Okay, all right. Now, fluency and intelligibility suffer when speech pattern is inconsistent. Yes, we can have some pauses, but overdoing it means that our mark will suffer, specifically fluency. So I would advise you explain to your students that, okay, some pauses are okay, don't overdo it, because your marks will drop. Okay, now, if you really need some more time to think about it, okay, it's not a bad thing to kindly ask for some more time. Okay, it's logical. You might not be able to think of the answer at that point. So can you say, could you please give me a few more seconds to think about it? It's okay, but don't overdo it. If for every question you say, could you please give me a few more seconds? It's, you understand this, okay? I mean, it's going to have a negative impact on your mark. And respect the time given, because the mark will be affected. Don't insist to continue, because the examiner, when we tell the kid to stop, the student must stop, because we have to adhere to a strict timeline. And each test might be 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes. If we overstep the boundaries, the time boundaries, then we will have a problem. The next candidate will have a problem. And of course, it becomes inconvenient if there's also the coordinator outside who's trying to calm everyone down. Why are they late? And so on and so on. Okay, clarification. I love this part. Let's say that a student didn't hear us clearly. And I will be honest, I mean, we're wearing masks. Okay, it's during the pandemic. And sometimes, you know, a candidate might not hear me correctly. I will, of course, repeat myself. It's okay. Even before the masks, kids are stressed. They can't focus 100%. It's okay to ask the examiner, could you please repeat what you just said? Of course, no problem. It won't be detrimental to their mark. Now, if they didn't understand, ask the examiner to rephrase. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you asked me. Could you please state it in a few other words or rephrase it? It's okay. Of course, don't overdo it with every question. Ask for unknown words. Oh, this is interesting. Now, they've asked me many a time, I don't know what this word means. And I'm like, ask me. Can a candidate ask the meaning of a word? Yes, yes, they can. This goes for all tests. If you know a student doesn't understand the meaning of a word, please ask. Okay, we'll be willing to explain it in English, of course. Not the whole sentence, just one word or two, and you know, it's okay. Now, if the student can't understand what's going on, even if you rephrase or repeat, and then the student starts panicking, what's going to happen? Well, we are examiners. We're trained to deal with this. We'll ask another question or we'll divert the conversation elsewhere. Okay, we know how to handle it, so don't worry. We won't let the student, you know, lose focus completely and panic and go insane. All right. Now, memorization. I hate memorization. Please don't, please, I beg you, don't have your kids memorize answers, okay? Don't have them have rehearsed answers. It's horrible. They're automated responses. They sound like robots. They don't make sense. Okay, I'm sorry for being so strict, but that's the blunt truth, okay? So the examiner is assessing your ability to communicate, not recite. We understand when a student has learned something by heart. I'm a teacher too. I want my kids to pass the test. I'm not reprimanding anyone, but we can't have a conversation. There's not a natural flow, because you can't tailor an answer to every question imaginable. You can't learn answers by heart. Having a conversation means that you are actually, you know, discussing, expressing your opinion, exchange of, you know, ideas. You can't rehearse this. So automated responses are unnatural, and it shows. It shows. You'll get a negative mark for this. And of course, they can't be used everywhere. Rote learning the answers from students who have already taken the test. Okay, so I examine a student, all right, and the student, goes rushing outside and tells his classmates, the teacher examined me about, saving the environment. Okay, so the teacher gathers her students around. All right, what have we talked about? The environment and pollution. She starts giving them words and they start learning things by heart. And everything they've done for the last 8 or 9 years goes down the drain. You've prepared your students to speak on that day. You've prepared them to speak naturally to a person that they're going to meet, a new acquaintance. Why destroy everything at the last second by giving them 10 words, having them focus on learning something by heart 2 or 3 minutes before their exam, and literally destroying their train of thought? It's a horrible thing a teacher can do. I'm sorry for being so strict, but that's the honest truth. Let them be themselves and enter the exam room, okay? Sharing the topics outside will lead to nothing. They will sound like machines and they will have achieved nothing. Now, the only stage that I'm okay that they might memorize and prepare as a presentation is stage 1. Not as a machine or a robot, but natural things. Okay, my name is Catherine. I love dancing and, I love listening to music. I love traveling, and I'm kind of a hopeless romantic. Okay, so just a few things about yourself is okay. You can learn these things by heart, but not a test, all right? Now, let's move on. Some expressions are, of course, welcome. When we're talking about formulaic expressions, like in an essay, okay? I mean, just give me a second, okay, I want to think about it, or I tend to believe that, all right, when you're expressing opinion, I prefer the first picture because, so you get the meaning, all right? There are some things that are natural, and yes, we can learn them by heart, uh, because formulaic expressions are part of every language. I'm not saying that you should learn by heart the whole picture that the student came outside running and told his classmates. That's horrible, okay? That you're learning things by heart, but this is different. Now, other things like thank you, nice to make your acquaintance, but not hello, I'm happy to make your acquaintance. I mean, that's so learned by heart. I mean, kids don't even understand what that means. It's better to keep it simple. Thank you, nice to meet you. Or may I come in? All right, now reaching conclusions. You're having a conversation and you have to reach a conclusion. A conclusion or decision is the culmination of a natural conversation. So you've been talking with the examiner or another student for like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and you have to reach a conclusion. Memorization does not allow the candidate to finalize the conversation. I'm stressing this as much as possible. Don't have your students memorize different situations. It will not lead anywhere because the conclusion must be drawn naturally. I will show you a few videos at the end, and you're going to understand what I'm talking about. Lack of critical thought hinders such an objective. Okay, have your students think for themselves, all right? Have them, express their opinion and reach a verdict. A conclusion is to be drawn after exchanges of ideas and thoughts, and this is what we want. That is the element of a natural speaker. And of course, we are trained to lead the conversation to it within a time limit. If you're worried that the kid or your students will have a problem reaching a conclusion, we'll try to divert it towards that goal and within a specific time limit. Okay, we just want your kids to learn English, study the language, and leave the rest to us. Okay. Now, when having a conversation, this is the third part of our webinar. What is a conversation? Okay. Now, a conversation is a dialogue, not a monologue. I've had a lot of kids who enter, the exam room when there are 2 candidates. Sometimes one of the 2 students will try to surpass the other. It's not a competition. Now, for example, let's imagine that one of the 2 students keeps talking to get a better mark. The other one, out of respect not to interrupt the student, or maybe stress that he's not as good as the other student, will remain silent. Now, what's going on here? The first student that keeps talking nonstop will receive a bad mark because he is doing a monologue. He's not asking the opinion of the other person. He's not having a conversation. This is not a dialogue. He will completely fail that part. Yes, I'm not joking, even if he is a perfect fluent speaker. Now, I've had some cases with candidates. One starts talking nonstop, as I just mentioned. The other one is like, excuse me, can I say something? And he keeps on going and doesn't respect the other candidate. The second candidate who just said, excuse me, who made an attempt to have a conversation will get a better mark than the first one. Surprising, isn't it? And this happens with many colleges and universities. Okay, so have a dialogue, respect one another. All right. And this has also happened with me as an examiner. So I'm trying to have a dialogue or a role play, and the student comes in and he speaks nonstop. He doesn't let me express my opinion. And it's not that I'm, spite and, I don't feel like I've been insulted. It's just that I have to speak as well. It's a dialogue. If he doesn't respect the fact that he has to exchange an opinion and have a discussion with the person that is with him, he will lose marks. He will even completely fail that part of the test. Be very careful of this. I don't know how much I can stress it, because a lot of students come in with this mindset that they're going to blow the examiner away, but that's not the case. Now, I also have to say it's disrespectful. I mean, you should respect the person that is with you. Allow the other person to speak. It's not about, throwing the other person under the bus in order for you to get a better mark. That's horrible. I mean, it's not a good human trait. Try to be more, humane and respectful towards one another. And of course, it's counterproductive. If you want to have a dialogue, you can't achieve this through a monologue. You need to express ideas and exchange information. It will not lead anywhere, no matter how good you are at the language. Now, commenting, even interrupting politely, are elements which are examined and marked. If, for example, someone is talking and you're like, excuse me, I would like to add something. Okay, these are, expressions that we endorse. Okay, please tell your students to do this. All right, I see your point, but I'd also like to add something. Okay, or wouldn't it be better though if we did something else? All right, you do have a point, and etc., etc. Okay. All right. Now, what's most important is to be respectful of the person that you're having a conversation with. I apologize, but I tend to disagree. Okay, it's not a bad thing to have a different opinion with someone else. The problem is the way that you do this. Okay. Now, let's say that you're unable to understand the other person. Okay, you have someone that you're having a conversation with. One of the two candidates does not make any sense. Could you please repeat that? I didn't quite catch that. Now, the second candidate is making an honest effort to understand him. He will not get a bad mark if the first student is not a good speaker, okay? We're examining both of them separately. If one of your students actually sits with another candidate who's not really good at English, which is a shame, but you should show that you know how to speak the language. All right, what exactly do you mean? Show that you're trying to understand him. All right. Okay, so these are different expressions that you can use. Can you further elaborate? I kind of lost you there. Okay. So you're saying that, all right, body language, try to show the other person that he's talking too fast or not clearly enough, or that you can't comprehend him. Now, disagreeing. You should disagree during an examination. It's part of having a conversation. Please disagree. Okay, but do not condemn. Try not to be cruel or egotistic, all right? This is very important. I understand your concerns, however, okay, or that's a great idea, but how about try not to be rude and say, no, you're wrong, I disagree with you. That's not polite, okay? I appreciate you giving it some thought, but we should also consider, okay, sounds interesting, but what if we, all right, there's so many wonderful, beautiful ways of interacting with a partner. So try to be polite or compliment the other's responses before stating your own counter opinion. Okay, we disagree with them, but let's not be rude about it. And you know what? We actually give good marks for this in most certificates. So respect your partner, listen to his opinion without interrupting. It's very important. Please nod politely. Don't use provocative hand gestures like, no, I disagree with you. That's horrible, okay? I mean, body language is examined, to a point and marked as well during the examination. So when speaking, don't turn it into a monologue. It's what I said before. You have to respect one another. That's part of having a conversation, the conversation etiquette. Each person has to, have their turn into, speaking to each other. And speaking longer does not mean that you'll get extra points, okay? I want you to keep this in mind. Please stress this to your students. You have to have a wonderful exchange of ideas. If one student thinks that, oh, I'm going to speak for 30 seconds instead of 10, no, that's a mistake. Speak for 5. Ask the other person what he thinks about what you just said. This is what we want in the dialogue part. Okay, so always smile, never show contempt, never interrupt the other. If for any reason your partner doesn't stop, and this is something that I wanted to say, okay, I'm an examiner, I'm explaining things how they are. Let's say that one student will still not stop talking. Okay, 2 things will happen here. First of all, I, as an examiner, will interrupt the student. I will do that. Okay, I'm trained for that. Because during the dialogue, if he doesn't let the other student speak, at some point I will interrupt him. Now, if I don't do that, please, look at the examiner like, I want to say something. Okay, so kindly, gently raise your hand so that the examiner knows that out of respect that you're not speaking, not that you don't know what to say. Okay, the examiner has to know this because if you're sitting like there, okay, and you're lowering your head, maybe the examiner might think that you don't know what to say. So please try to raise the hand so that your partner or the examiner will see that you want to be a part of the conversation. Now, the secrets of a good conversation, are there any secrets? Yes. For example, if I ask 2 students, okay, 2 kids who are sitting for the exams, I would like both of you to talk about your favorite hobbies. Please begin. And they're like looking at each other. The best way to start a conversation is with a question. Okay, so what are your favorite hobbies? So one student asks the other. That's the best way to start. Start with a question. Or give a compliment. Oh, wow, I love your t-shirt. Are you into anime? Because I think that's an anime character. Yeah, I am into anime. I actually, collect anime and manga and stuff like that. So by a simple compliment, you can start a conversation. Or I really like your lipstick. Do you do makeup as a hobby? And, the person might say no or yes, but it's a conversation starter. Talk about common interests. Now, there might be some things that might be awkward. For example, I had like 2 kids once, they were talking about hobbies, and one of them said, I'm into first-person shooters. I play, Call of Duty, and the other person said, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about this because I'm horrified by killings and blood. And, I was listening to them carefully, and he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. What would you like to talk about? And, the other person, the girl, she was like, are you into movies? And he's like, yes, what kind of movies do you like? And they did find common ground there because they liked, Marvel movies. It was great. So if it feels awkward, just say, I don't want to talk about it. Tell your students to insist on things that they like. If they're not invested in it, they don't care about it, it's okay to talk about it during, the examination. And of course, if at some point, the conversation starts to lag, continue by diverting the conversation elsewhere. Ask another question. Okay, so you like anime. What else do you like? You said movies. And, ask questions. Asking questions during conversation is the perfect way to have the conversation flowing. Okay, all right. Be curious. What did I mention earlier? Oh, I love your t-shirt. It's an anime t-shirt. That's great. But careful not to cross the line. Do not ask personal questions, okay? Because it will create awkward moments during the exam, not only for the candidates, for the examiner as well. I remember one of the candidates actually commented something, a physical disability that another student had. Okay, so the child, had crutches, and everyone felt very, awkward at that moment. And, I couldn't do anything as an examiner. The only thing I was waiting for is that I wanted, the student to talk about something else, and he actually did, because I would, try to divert the conversation, somewhere else. Now, some questions might be too personal, what I just said. And of course, keep in mind that your partner is not your antagonist, but an ally. I'll explain something. For example, in Michigan, ECP proficiency. Okay, at some point in stage 3, there's a stage in which you have to debate over who is the best person to choose for an event or the best option to choose. And, they have this wonderful, conversation, and they have to reach a conclusion and eliminate one option. Now, I've had many candidates enter the exam room and they're like, no, my option is better. And, they see it as, how can I say this? They see it as a matter of life or death, that if they withdraw and they don't support their opinion to the end, that they will get a lower mark. Well, the joke's on them, because the person who actually withdraws his option and says that, okay, I think we'll go with your option because mine seems to have these drawbacks. The person that actually, gives up his option will be awarded a better mark. Okay, it's good to cooperate. Don't see the other person as an antagonist, all right? I mean, you're both in it together. You both want, to achieve something great. Teamwork is something that we must endorse. Now, admitting and elaborating that your opinion or option is not the best are signs of a good conversationist. It's what I said before. Okay, if you say that your opinion is not the best and you go with the other person's opinion, it's great. You even get a better mark because you elaborated on it. You explained the reasons why you didn't support your option in the end. Okay, time limits. People, I want your attention here. Please pay attention to this. Each test has different restrictions. Okay, let's get this out of the way. All tests are different, all levels are different, all stages are different. Be 100% sure of what you are going to sit for, okay, for the exams. Be wary of what you're going to prepare your students for. So in many cases, if a student is under the time limit, unfortunately, I will just have to keep looking at him until he continues. And I feel so uncomfortable because I wish I could help him, but it's not, I'm not allowed to help the kids. So I might, add a question to have the conversation flowing, but if it's a monologue and I'm not allowed to interfere, I have to respect the time limit. So if I tell a student you have to speak for 2 minutes and the kid speaks for 30 seconds, I can't do much to help him there. I might wait for another 10 seconds, maybe throw a question that has to do with the topic to nudge him to speak further, but I can't do anything to help him further than that. Also, the examiner will urge the candidate to continue, please continue, which will stress your candidates. So please inform them of the time restrictions of each test. Now, if there's nothing left to say, what can a student do? Well, in this case, if there's nothing else left to say, it would be advisable for the student to say, I don't know what else to say here. I'm out of ideas, try to smile a bit, because there's a difference between not knowing how to speak the language and being run out of ideas. If you're honest about it, I'm sorry, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what else to say here. The examiners will take this, into consideration. Now, what about surpassing the time limit? Please, I mean, don't do this. It's horrible because you don't respect the examiner, you don't respect the student who's waiting outside, you don't respect the coordinator, you don't respect the 100 students that are waiting with their teachers, and of course the evaluators, the person that is going to try to evaluate you. If, for example, I say you can speak for 2 minutes and the speaker keeps speaking for like 5 or 6 minutes, unfortunately, I can't interrupt the candidate all the time. Okay, if he doesn't respect my wishes to stop, he will get a 0 mark on that part of the test. It's the horrible truth. No matter how much he tries to impress me, things will not change that. So please don't surpass the time limit. When the examiner says, that's the end of this part, please respect it. I've had many candidates say, no, 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 I want to continue. And I'm looking at them in awe and I'm like, why is he doing that to me? I've had this lady who was desperately trying to convince me that she knows English, she needed it for her job. I think it was a B2 certificate, a lower certificate, and she wouldn't let me continue the test. I mean, I was literally about to call the coordinator, and she got a negative mark, not from me, from the evaluators in the university. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of delays, and she will get a negative mark. Okay, now in this part of the presentation, classifying oral skills. What should we practice? Now, before explaining these individually, I'm just going to state them briefly so that you know what we're going to talk about. There are a lot of repertoire of routines that you can, actually implement in class. Exchanging information. Now, providing personal information, something that I mentioned earlier, giving instructions, offering directions, narrating a story, describing something or someone. Okay, and we're going to look at all of these, in detail in each slide further down. These are practices that you can implement in class, and believe me, they will help tremendously. Okay, all right. Now, these routines are based on Wire. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. From 1993, they're highly effective. I've used them in class, and trust me, they're really good at preparing kids, for examinations. So let's get started. Now, providing personal information. What kind of personal information? Well, the ones that you see here: name, age, family members, neighborhood, hobbies, aspirations. Now, these are elements. I myself said at the beginning of the webinar that you can, prepare stage 1, a personal presentation of yourself. And to be honest, before I continue, there are some speaking tests for some universities that do not have stage 1 in the traditional sense. What do I mean by this? I've had kids come into the exam room for Pearson, for example. Pearson does not have a personal presentation stage at the beginning. So when a kid comes in, hello, my name is John, I'm 12 years old, and I live in Philadelphia. And I'm like, whoa, 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 God, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, I'm pleased to meet you, John, but I'm not asking your personal information. Let's start the test. For this part of the test, we are going to talk about the environment. And the child is blown away because he obviously didn't know the format of the test, what I said earlier. So it's good to know about the personal presentation. Please check to see if your certificate, the one that your students are sitting for, actually includes this. And yes, it would be a good idea to prepare it. Now, aspirations. I've had a lot of students who sat for the exam, and it's funny because a lot of them are like, okay, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor. You know how many doctors I've examined, potential doctors? You don't have to convince your kids to be something they don't want to be, because the fact that it looks fake, it sounds fake, is evident to the examiner. You could be honest. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up yet. I kind of like playing basketball, but I don't know. That's the most honest response that I can get, and I'll appreciate it. So try not to prepare them with fake information because it shows. Okay, now, all of this, if your students are prepared for the first stage of the test, the personal presentation, it will boost their self-esteem, and, it will help them, positively present themselves. If they present themselves really well at the first stage, you're like, oh my God, I'm doing great. So I broke the ice, I'm ready for the rest of the test. You can't imagine how great they feel when they continue the test, because all that stress has been, relieved, and that's what we want. And of course, it does promote a positive image, because when I can see a kid, being able to present himself, I'm like, okay, this kid knows how to speak the language. It does influence me to a degree. Now, giving instructions. At this point, I would like to add that instructions is a major part of any language. So what you can do, this is the fun part. Now, you can start, teaching kids from the A1 level, even before that. We don't have to wait until lower proficiency, on how to give instructions on a recipe. That would be great. Or how to play a game, give instructions on how to play Monopoly or any other kind of game. Do this in English. Magic tricks. You know how many of my kids do magic tricks? There's so many magic tricks. They've learned magic tricks online. There's so many videos. And, they actually, do these tricks at school, and they're explaining, to each other how to do this in English. It's wonderful, giving instructions. Instructions on how to take care of a pet, These are wonderful ideas. Try to use them in class. No more than 5 minutes. It's wonderful practice for your students. You think it's too childish? Well, I have proficiency students. Just remember one thing, that there are also very young test takers at the level of A1. Okay, we've talked about this, and it would be advisable to play games and have all these, these ideas be implemented as soon as possible. I mean, communication starts at primary levels. Okay, don't wait until the last moment to try to use these techniques. Games can and should be used in advanced levels. I play Monopoly with my kids, okay, even in proficiency, and we have fun doing it. Now, what do you learn? Bargaining, proposing, interacting. I'll buy your hotel for $500. You're not selling it to me? Oh my God, I mean, you're a horrible person. Okay, so I'm not paying you any rent. You can't imagine what they're discussing during the game. And I'm actually planning on playing with them, now before their exams. Okay, now asking for and giving directions. This is probably one of the most important elements. You can show them a map, an image on the board, okay, how to give directions. You can even, if you have young kids, okay, if you have young learners, use Legos, use play sets. You can't imagine how much fun they have. Ask them to build the city and then give directions on how to go to which building. You'll be amazed by how much fun they'll have, how much they'll enjoy this activity, and how much English they'll practice. Their communication skills will blossom by this. Cambridge, YLE, A2 level, flyers. There is this wonderful part in the speaking segment called narrating a story. So you have 5 images and you have to describe what's happening in each image. This is amazing because you practice techniques in storytelling. Okay, and it's great to practice. One day we see a father and his son buying a new television set, okay, at the electronics store. It's a huge box. So then you continue with each square. Then the father and the son try to put it in the car. However, before reaching, the house, they drop it down. Okay, I'm not going to tire you with the whole story. It's interesting that hand gestures and body language are so important. Okay, remember what I told you that we should use body language? If you look at picture 5, you see the mother. She's, holding her heart, with her hand, okay, on her chest. These body expressions are amazing. So I was once examining young learners, and I remember there was this kid, he was so expressive, and they won the match. He was like expressing himself. He was, really into it, and I loved it. And his command of the language became much better because he was living it at that moment. And, expressing emotions while narrating is something that we endorse, and it will add this wonderful flavor to it. Okay. All right. Now, one final thing, role play can also be implemented. Maybe one can play the role of the kid, the other of the father. We can also have a narrator. Another can play the role of the mother. There's so many ideas, so much potential to doing this. And it's just with 5 simple pictures on a piece of paper. All right, you can do wonders with stories like these. I always endorse comic strips. These are amazing things that can be used in class. How about retelling a story? I had my proficiency students, they listen to this listening segment about a news report about this typhoon, something like that. So you can listen to a story, a news bulletin, or an interview. So after hearing it, I asked them, what did you understand from this? So each of them gave their own take on it. It was amazing. So I asked them to retell it in their own words, and I also asked them to be expressive about it. Retelling a story, an interview, or anything will really help your kids, express themselves in the way that they perceive that they want to. And, you can ask, each student to do it in their own way. It's a wonderful exercise. It doesn't have to be a long interview. It could be 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Then have them, express it in their own way. Describing something. Show and tell. I mean, that's amazing. I love show and tell. Have show and tell with your lower class. I'm not joking. They can, besides bringing something to school, they can describe a store where they bought something, a new necklace, anything. Ask them to describe a monument, something that is in their neighborhood or their city. Okay, this is really good practice. Painting, all right. A painting that they saw. You can find a few images online, show them on the whiteboard. What does this painting make you feel? Okay, does it make you feel happy, sad? Why? Start describing the painting and what it makes you feel. A museum, if we can visit a museum, that would be great. Have them during the whole field trip to the museum, show their feelings, express themselves in English. It's a wonderful, experience. And of course, as I just mentioned, express your feelings, not only the physical attributes of what you're describing or what you're seeing. Okay, watching the time. Now, describing someone, I would propose that you find different pictures online with different characteristics. For example, I find this with 8 images, 8 profile pictures. And what I do with my students, I do not only ask them to describe their facial characteristics or their hair, I also ask them to describe what they are feeling as well, their emotions. Because as I mentioned earlier, don't only describe the physical attributes, but also, the emotions and what they feel at that moment. Okay, it's really good practice. Are you having a lesson with younger kids? Try using familiar characters from cartoons. Why don't they actually use cartoon characters like this? Shaggy is the tallest. Okay, let's say you have a really junior class, you're learning comparative or superlative form. Okay, Velma is the shortest of the humans. All right, and so on and so on. You can describe hair color, everything. All right, there's so many wonderful ideas that you can use to help your students, practice the language. Now, interacting. What else can we do with interaction? Telephoning. Why don't you have them role play in class that they're speaking on the phone? Have one student, for example, say, would you like to go out, for coffee tonight? And let them, continue the conversation. You'd be amazed by what they would say. I had, 2 girls chatting online, gossiping about other friends. Like, okay, that's enough. They were talking for like 2, 3 minutes straight. It was wonderful. Now, buying or selling, you might tell a student, okay, you have an old iPhone, you want to sell it. Okay, the other person is a potential buyer. Start. Okay, negotiate the price. Do it now. Kids are really smart. You'll be blown away by what they discuss. Requests. Okay, can you please come and help me, or come pick me up because my car broke down or whatever. Role play interviews. You are a famous Hollywood, actress. You are a famous reporter. Start the conversation. Talk about your latest film. Why not? Okay, role play is wonderful. Okay, for helping them, boost their skills, and of course, expressing opinions and making suggestions. Okay, now, how do we assess kids in class? First of all, without the written consent, it's difficult to do recordings of them. So before implementing this advice, I would advise that you record their oral mock tests in class and erase the recording in front of them. Okay, so that you don't keep any evidence of it. Now, before doing so, before erasing it, have them hear it afterwards, and they can evaluate themselves. You can't imagine how good this is for them to hear themselves like, oh my God, I said that. Yes, you did. You can hear it. Or, oh no, I'm not going to say that again. Or something else, these utterances, or like, okay. So by hearing themselves say it, they actually stop doing it afterwards. It's amazing how helpful a voice recorder is, okay, for students that are preparing themselves for an oral exam. And in the old days, we'd buy a voice recorder. Now we have our smartphones, so they can actually do it themselves. Now, focus on the elements which need attention. Tell them, you keep making a mistake, has, for example, or you do the all the time sound, or you actually mistake present simple for present continuous. Focus on the things that they do mistakenly, because usually their mistakes are 2, 3. Okay, each student has the same 2, 3 mistakes every time. If you actually narrow them out and eliminate them, their fluency and their figure of speech will improve drastically. So you offer recommendations for enhancement, and that's the whole purpose of recording them and having them hear it afterwards. Now, it would be best if you did this one-on-one and not in class, because some students are embarrassed. If you as a school do oral exam sessions individually, I applaud you. It's something that I endorse, and have a recorder with you. And something else, during the first test, not only the first test, the first few tests, it's okay if it's not an actual test, you interrupt your student and explain, no, try to do stage 2 like this, or be careful of how you do this. It's good to offer guidelines during the first test so the student is fully aware of how to do the test, okay? Now, there are some kids who are very stressful. They're very stressful. And it's a good idea to explain to them that stress is inevitable in all types of tests, even if you are, participating in a driver's license test. We are always stressful when we're having tests, okay? Any kind of tests. Even I'm stressed because if I have an evaluator inside, I'm like, okay, I have to be very careful. But regardless, I have to be careful of every single thing I say for the 60, 70 students I will examine every time, because if I make a mistake, it will be recorded as well. And I'm an examiner. I'm actually even more stressed than they are. Okay, so it's okay. We're all stressed. And we all make mistakes every day of our lives. Simple mistakes, even worse mistakes. And you know what? Tell your students, please tell them, we're people like everyone else, and we're also teachers. We also have students that are sitting for the exams. We are teachers like you are. Okay, so if you share this information with them, they'll feel much more relaxed when they meet us. Okay, if they know that I'm also a teacher, they'll feel better knowing that I'm also worried about my students and I'm also a human being who can make mistakes. So practically speaking, I'd also like to add something else. Messing up one part isn't the end of the world. I mean, each test has like 3 or 4 parts. So what? I mean, you're not going to fail if you mess up a part. And the final score is a culmination of over a dozen factors. So even if you're not fluent, even if you don't have the perfect vocabulary, even if you don't have the perfect grammar, you might be good at pronunciation or intonation or expressing ideas or sustaining a dialogue. It doesn't all come down to grammar and vocabulary. You can actually pass a test without having a really, high level in those fields. And something else, before your students go crazy an hour after the exams, tell them that the first impression they have before leaving the exam room is the actual perfect feeling that they get. I mean, if they think they did well the moment they finish the test, that's what actually happened, okay? Because after an hour, self-doubt comes kicking in, and you should tell them that they should not focus on that, okay? Something else, please tell them not to ask us if they passed, okay? Because when they ask us, I say, I can't tell you, and they think that they failed. Please tell them that I can't tell them because I will actually lose my job if I do. Okay, tell them not to ask these uncomfortable questions because I will give them a reply of ignorance. They will acknowledge it as a negative reply, and they will feel horrible afterwards. And of course, please tell them not to make assumptions of our mark by judging our facial expressions. We are tired. Yes, we're seriously tired. Imagine examining 40, 50 students, speaking nonstop like I am now, because I'm starting to get tired as well during this webinar. Okay, this is a part that I always wanted to share with so many teachers, students with special educational needs. I want everyone to understand that there are so many students that are so talented, and the test is tailored to their needs. Okay, it's a shame when a student with special educational needs enters our exam room and they're not given the time that they deserve to finish the test. Some elements are examined, some are not. For example, in some cases, we do not examine fluency, okay, or we don't examine pronunciation. Maybe you didn't know that, but that's true. The marking is different. So in any case, if you have students that are with special educational needs, please contact us. Contact the exam center for details and guidelines. Bring the proper paperwork. It's a pity, it's a shame if our students are not treated with respect and being able to reach their limit, their potential, because we're limiting them by not adapting to the test to their potential and their needs. It's our obligation actually to do so, right? Because everyone deserves the equal opportunity to perform and shine. Okay. All right. Now, We are going to look at a video. It's a video of myself. We cannot see the student. We don't know the name of the student. I was examining a B2 level student a few years ago, and I would like to apologize for the quality of sound. So please, during the video, I would highly advise you to increase the volume. And when I start speaking, decrease it again, okay? So we're going to see 3 elements of a speaking test. All right, I think we still have time. Supporting an argument. Okay, so the question is, this is from a B2 level test. I will not tell you which test it is, which university, I can't tell you. However, it's from a B2 level lower test. And the question is it better to socialize on the internet or go out and make friends? Now, this part of the test, the student should have been informed that he has to support his opinion. It's an argument. Okay, so he has to adamantly support his opinion. He doesn't have to withdraw and, succumb to what the examiner says. So let's see how this will turn out, because the candidate is in favor of going out to make friends. That's what he initially said. Okay, so we're going to watch the video. I will stop sharing the video, the presentation, and I'm going to share the video with you. So just give me a second. Okay, so here is the video. All right, let's go. Okay, that's great. Now, we're going to discuss something together. The question is it better to socialize on the internet or go out and make friends?
I think that go out and make friends because a person have face-to-face communication and have great time with a person and this.
Okay, well, you have to admit though that you can also socialize on the internet and make new friends. Don't you like that?
I don't like that. I think that face-to-face is better.
Okay, but there are some cases in which, I mean, your friend might live in another country and you want to stay in touch with him.
Yes, the internet is if a friend is in another country, the internet is good. Is good for the communication.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let me reshare the PowerPoint with you. Okay, and here we are. Now, let me just show my video panel again. There I am. Okay, now, so the candidate was originally in favor of going out to make friends. He didn't support his claims though, at the end. He didn't support it. What did he do? Well, to be honest, he has no claims to support his argument. He said face-to-face is better. He didn't explain why though. And then he said internet is good for the communication, which was, the language form was, inappropriate. And not only that, he actually supported what I said. So for this part of the test, he actually got a 0 mark. Okay, the task goal had not been achieved. I know it's a shame, and he did try, he did speak, but it wasn't, the focus of this task. And of course, his language use was poor. He mixed up have and has. Right, it was kind of confusing. All right, now, something else that I want to say, that Greek students do this a lot, and it's driving me crazy. When they finish a sentence, they say this. Please tell your students not to do this. It's something that, we don't use in the English language. This, what does this mean? Okay, all right. Now, let's go to another part of the same speaking test. The next stage, he's supposed to describe 2 pictures and select one for a specific purpose. Okay, so let's watch the video. Allow me to stop sharing my presentation again, and I'm going to share the video once more. Okay, here we go. Now here are two pictures promoting different types of holidays. Please describe what type of holidays the pictures show.
In the first picture, I can see a jeep for maybe for the safari with five person, and I can see Raycon. Maybe it's in grass.
Okay.
In the second picture, I can see many people, cars, and this.
Okay, so which of these two pictures would you choose for a poster advertising an adventure holiday?
I think that first picture is better from for advertise holiday, because a jeep from safari is better and very interesting.
Okay, thank you. Now, we are going to take... Okay, so let's reopen the PowerPoint presentation. Here we are again. And let me show my video panel. There I am. Okay. All right. Now, the first picture was described with basic vocabulary and a few mistakes, but he did describe it. That was good. Okay, even though there's some mistakes. The second picture had an adequate description. He was really fast. He didn't describe it fully. It was like one sentence. It was a shame. And afterwards, when I asked him which picture he would choose, he just said it's the best choice and interesting. He didn't explain why he chose it. So he actually failed that task. Okay, he didn't completely fail it, but he didn't answer the question. So he got a really low mark in that part of the test. Okay, now the next part is role play. Okay, so when we're having a role play, we have a dialogue, a conversation. Okay, you have to respect one another, and each one takes turns into speaking. All right. Now, before uh, before examining what he did, I have to reshare the video, and here we are. Okay, let's see what happened during the role play. Take part in a role play. Here is a card with a situation on it. Please read it to yourself. Okay, so you are a person trying to plan a vacation with a travel agent. I am the travel agent, and you must discuss your vacation plans with me. I'll start. Hello, how can I help you?
I will travel in a vacation country. Could you help?
Yes, of course. Do you know which country you wish to travel to?
Yes, in Paris.
Okay, well, it will cost you some money, but I can arrange the cheapest travel plan for you.
Okay.
What would you like? Would you like to stay at a hotel with a swimming pool?
Yes, a hotel with a swimming pool is a good idea, but I will the hotel near the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, that's going to be a bit more expensive, but I'll see what I can do. Okay, thank you very much. End of test. End of recording. That's it. Okay, so you can take your things.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's examine what happened here, okay, in this part of the test. Now, let me share the PowerPoint again with you. Okay, and here I am. All right, now in this part, despite grammar and lexical inaccuracies, he expressed his opinion. He did. And the conversation was sustained and included minor details. I mean, he wanted to stay near the Eiffel Tower. That was great of him. Yes, the grammar wasn't perfect. Yes, he had mistakes, but he did have a conversation. If he actually had this conversation abroad in London, he would, get his point across. He would be, understood by the fellow, speaker. So this is what I wanted to share with you. Now, at this point I'm sorry, of the webinar, I'm getting a little tired. You can ask me anything you want. We can have a discussion based on everything that we explained just now. I would like to say that I'm grateful and thankful for having you all here today. It was wonderful to share, all this information with you. I hope you had a wonderful time. And I would like to wish the best to you and your students who are taking the test during this next session during Christmas. Okay, so if you need any further information, you can contact us at eltnews.gr, FLL forum gr, at info@eltnews.gr, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere. Okay, so thank you all for being with us here today. It was a pleasure. My name is Catherine, and I look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you.